I don't know, any questions from anybody about it? The research I did was reading, basically. I mean, I read a lot of case studies on people who had drug addiction issues and also how they kind of fell into the addiction. And in a lot of cases, from what I read, was it's a little more gradual than I depict in the book. I think for the sake of just economy, I had her become addicted a little bit more quickly, which does happen to some people. Some people will try drugs once and they're kind of hooked. Other people, it takes longer, so I kind of erred on the short side, just to get the story, kind of start the story and get it moving a little bit more quickly, to get onto the issues I really wanted to start exploring. And a lot of people have been asking me about this, and part of it is that it's one variable among other variables. So her life is completely foreign to me in a lot of ways. And so to me, the fact that she's a woman is just one more of those variables in the mix that I am kind of considering. And another part of that too is I didn't go out and say I'm going to write a book from a woman's point of view. I just thought, okay, I'm going to go out and write a book from a person's point of view. And I know from my own experience a lot of what people like Audrey might go through. You know, that sense of doubt and needing reassurance or even loneliness that she goes throughout a lot of the novel. I think a lot of people have been there and can identify with that. And I guess the question is, what happens when that leads to drug addiction or something else? And that is where the real exploration of the character went in. The rest I can kind of talk to just by virtue of being a human and flawed like everybody else. The fact that she was a woman allowed me to explore that a little bit more easily than if she had been a man. I think when I initially wrote the very first draft of this was a short story in which it was about a woman, and I wasn't really going in the direction of consumerism at the time. But when I started developing it into a novel, the fact that I had started with this woman helped me to just look at all of those ads, all those messages that are out there about, like, well, if you don't look skinny, you may as well be invisible, or all of that stuff that's in our culture that is just so disturbing and disheartening that, and it really comes to the fore when you're paging through any magazine or when you are just watching any amount of television whatsoever. That change occurred in possibly like the second to last draft. Originally it was just told kind of as a straight story, and then I reshuffled the whole story for a couple of reasons. But the biggest one was for me to demonstrate that a lot of the novel, in my mind anyway, is her search to figure out where her life made this turn. So we have a lot of that present tense action that's happening, and her life is just totally out of control. But at the same time, a lot of when I would start a past tense chapter, it's her trying to think back, all right, which decisions did I make that put me where I am now? And it's that intellectual movement that I was trying to suggest, that we're in many ways haunted by our past all the time. It's always with us. And even as we go through our day-to-day actions, we're still thinking, or at least frequently I'm thinking, okay, how exactly did I get to this point? From a reader's point of view, you want to identify with someone in the novel, and you want to be sympathetic to someone. It's very difficult to be sympathetic to Audrey a lot of the time because of the things she's doing. But you have these little girls in there who, Lily's, I mean, she's cute doing her own thing, but I mean, Catherine's the one who you're just thinking, wow, like I want her to come out of this unscathed. Right. And you really care about those two girls, and you want good things to happen to them despite all that's going on around them. So that's why I put them in the novel, and then to develop them into these rounded characters, I gave them these attributes that you're talking about, especially Catherine wanting to hold everything together. Most of the male characters don't come off too well, but most of the people in the whole novel don't come off too well. A lot of people ask me, like, do you just not like people? And apparently I don't. And everyone thinks I'm joking when I say that. And but I think, but there is one kind of marginally heroic male character, and he's a character named Captain Panther. Right. And what I tried to do with him though was to build him up from initially being this completely comic character who is just weird and nobody likes him and you think he's a loser, to suddenly realizing, wow, all along he's the one guy who has it all together. He's the one guy who's going to help Audrey, you know, if she can be helped, help her out of the situation that she's in. And I was definitely trying to be careful to gradually depict him this way, because I'm never a big fan of the hero who's like completely great and just a wonderful human being. I could give you like clever answers that are just kind of explain why socially I had to do that, and they would be lies. But yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just in my mind, they were serving a certain purpose in the book, as opposed to me wanting them to be fleshed out characters. I mean, Svetlana is there to be kind of the foil to Melinda in a lot of ways. And then Raj is there just to serve as this guy who is interested in Audrey, but the key scene being the one where she just kind of plays along and says, take this pill. And he'll do it because he's interested in her. And, you know, as far as the xenophobia goes, in my mind it wasn't necessarily he does it because he's of Indian descent or anything like that. He does it just because he's kind of a dumb kid and he's in love with her. And so, you know, not again, it's also not my dumb kidophobia, but it's still, they were there to serve that purpose as opposed to me exploring who they were. Well, I think the reason they're so big is because that's what's being written, and they're being written because that's where the writers live. Right. You know, it's kind of
hypocrites.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, a lot of the writers who are writing about that kind of thing live in the suburbs, and they're just observing the world around them.
Right.
You know, it kind of explains why there aren't that many novels about poor people, because you know, and there used to be, you know, you used to have like John Dos Passos, different you know, writers saying, exploring what did it mean to be poor and living hand to mouth. Mm-hmm. Writers are in a position now where, you know, I live in Havertown, I live in a very nice neighborhood. For me to write, it's kind of odd, but for me to write about poverty would be somewhat disingenuous, but by the same token, for me to write from a woman's point of view about a drug dealer, also somewhat disingenuous. But yeah, I think to some degree it would probably be harder for me to write a novel about poverty than it was for me to write a novel from a woman's point of view. If you want to buy a copy of the book, they're here. They have stacks and stacks of them. Even if you own a copy, it makes a great gift. And it keeps me from getting too depressed when the stacks don't get smaller. Just buy several and come back with a fake mustache and buy another one. Do whatever you need to do to make me happy is kind of my goal. All right, well, thank you all, and it was great seeing you all.